In a distant galaxy, the towering metropolis of the planet Neovirax was governed by a system where humans and cyborgs worked together in harmony. One of the fundamental rules of the Nova police force was that every human officer had to have a cyborg partner. This system combined human intuition and emotional intelligence with the speed and computational power of artificial intelligence in the fight against crime. Tinx was one of the bravest and most skilled detectives in the Nova police force. Known for her sharp mind, quick decision-making, and fearless nature, she stood out in every situation. She had an athletic build, striking blue hair, and a complex tattoo pattern on her shoulder, making her instantly recognizable. Trained in combat tactics, martial arts, and advanced weaponry, she was a formidable force. Tinx was a warrior for justice, but she also questioned the corrupt aspects of the system. To her, rules were guidelines, but she never hesitated to cross the line when necessary. Her greatest weakness was her deep trust in those she formed emotional bonds with, often putting herself in danger because of it. Notable traits: high-tech police armor and a custom-designed gun, the Void Blaster. Expertise in hacking and data analysis, exceptional speed and agility, making her a master of close combat. A rebellious yet idealistic spirit, operating by her own rules. Tinx's partner and closest friend Tenker was an advanced X-77 class cyborg created by the Nova police force, with a fully metallic body, glowing red eyes, and an advanced AI. He was a nightmare for criminals. His superior physical strength, sharp data analysis skills, and ultra-fast reflexes made him one of the best assets in law enforcement. However, unlike other cyborgs, Tenker possessed an unknown emotional simulation system, which sometimes made him feel almost human. He was usually logical and composed, but his loyalty to Tinx led him to question even his own programming at times. Notable traits: advanced combat module, ultra speed, heavy armor, and reinforced steel claws. Extensive data analysis capability, instantly scans digital cameras, city systems, and databases. Independent thinking: unlike other cyborgs, he has the ability to question orders and make logical deductions. Loyalty: no matter the situation, he is devoted to Tinx and will even override his own protocols to protect her. Tinx and Tenker were the ultimate team, fighting against the most dangerous crimes in Neovirax. But something was going wrong in the city. A mysterious criminal organization had started hacking into cyborg systems, manipulating them into becoming lethal killing machines. Caught in a deep conspiracy, Tinx and Tenker were not only fighting to protect the city but also questioning their own fate. The massive neon billboards hovering in the sky bathed the narrow, dark alleys in a dim blue and purple glow. Rain pounded against the metal ground, echoing through the empty streets and adding a damp, metallic scent to the city's polluted air. Steam rising from the garbage piles completed the eerie atmosphere. Tinx and Tenker stood in front of an apartment entrance, marked off with police tape. "The victim's name is Arlen Voss," Tinx said, scanning through the data on her panel. He worked for a private software company, no criminal record. But what was he doing in these back alleys at midnight? Tenker knelt beside the corpse, his glowing red eyes rapidly processing hundreds of analyses. The man lay on his back, a frozen expression of fear on his face. A sharp object had been driven into his chest. However, something about the scene was off. "This doesn't look like a normal murder," Tenker said, running his metal fingers over the burn marks on the victim's clothing. "There are traces of an energy-based weapon, but the angle of the wound is strange. The killer wasn't in front of him, they were above him." Tinx narrowed her eyes and looked up. Could it be a rooftop attack, or was he shot from the air? Tenker focused on the shattered glass and scattered bloodstains around the body. Whoever did this wasn't an ordinary criminal. This was either the work of a professional assassin or something much bigger. Just then, Tinx noticed something on the ground. A small, metallic fragment gleamed under the dim alley light. She crouched down and picked it up, inspecting the engraved serial number. "This is a cyborg component." Tenker instantly ran an analysis, accessing his database. Within seconds, he had an answer: yes, and more importantly, This component belongs to a model that is no longer legally in production. Tinx's expression hardened. That means it's from an illegally manufactured cyborg. That shouldn't happen in Neovirax. Cyborgs are strictly regulated and controlled by the state. So how did this end up here? Tenker lifted his head and scanned the area. Someone is operating outside the system. Tinx, if illegal cyborg production has started, things in this city are about to get a lot more complicated. Tinx took a deep breath and pulled a cigarette from her jacket pocket but didn't light it. Someone had a damn good reason to kill this man. This beast could be a lead. But first, Tenker's eyes suddenly flared. Tinx, something's approaching. Be ready. Metallic footsteps echoed from the far end of the dark alley. A shadowed figure emerged from the gloom. Its glowing red eyes locked onto them. A cyborg. And this model wasn't in the Nova Police Force's database. We're being watched, Tinx muttered, narrowing her eyes. Looks like it's going to be a long night. Tinx and Tenker sprang into action immediately. The red-eyed cyborg lurking in the shadows had noticed them and was now fleeing. The heavy thud of its metal feet echoed through the narrow alleyway. Tenker, activate tracking algorithms, Tinx whispered, gripping the weapon on her belt. Tenker's eyes flickered slightly as he instantly calculated the cyborg's speed and movement pattern. I've mapped out its escape route. 3 blocks ahead, it will enter a dead-end alley. If we move now, we can corner it. Tinx nodded and took off at full speed. Tenker, with his superhuman agility, moved ahead in just a few strides. The two split up, flanking the fleeing cyborg from different angles. A narrow alleyway, dim lights, the echo of hurried footsteps in the shadows. The figure was unbelievably fast, climbing walls, slipping between buildings, and disappearing momentarily into the neon haze. But Tinx and Tenker never lost sight of it. Then, the cyborg made a mistake. It miscalculated its route and suddenly came face to face with a dead-end wall, forcing it to halt. Now, Tinx shouted, raising her void blaster. Tenker lunged forward, his metallic arms extending wide to block any possible escape route. The cyborg hesitated for a brief moment, scanning its surroundings for an exit, but there was none. Tinx stepped closer, her weapon aimed at the cyborg. Who are you? She asked coldly. And why were you at the crime scene? For a moment, the cyborg remained silent. Then, in a distorted metallic voice, it muttered, You weren't supposed to find me here. Tinx narrowed her eyes. Were you following us? Or are you connected to the murder? The red glow in the cyborg's eyes flickered slightly. Then, suddenly, it made an unexpected move. It reached behind its neck, attempting to shut itself down. Tenker, stop it, but it was too late. Within seconds, the cyborg's eyes dimmed, its body stiffened, and it collapsed to its knees. A small spark flickered, followed by a thin trail of smoke rising from its neck. It self-destructed, Tenker said, his voice tense. Why would it do that? Tinx rushed forward, examining the cyborg's body, trying to access its system. But the data core in its head had completely melted. Someone doesn't want us following the trail, Tinx muttered, furrowing her brow. This isn't the work of an assassin. This is the beginning of a conspiracy. Just then, Tenker's eyes glowed again. Tinx, he alert. I just detected a disturbance in the city's security systems. Someone knows we're here. At that exact moment, a flash of light flickered from a building above them. A sniper's laser locked onto Tinx's chest. Sniper! Tenker shouted, shoving Tinx to the ground just in time. The bullet sliced through the air within milliseconds, striking exactly where she had been standing. Tinx reacted instinctively, rolling swiftly to a cover point. They set us up. Tenker ran a quick scan. The shot came from the rooftop of a 12-story building to the west. If we don't move now, they'll take us out with the next shot. Tinx narrowed her eyes, her mind racing. Who had set them up? And how was this linked to the murder? Now, they had a choice to make. Would they go after the sniper, or stay and continue investigating the clues left at the crime scene? The sniper's bullet had struck the spot where Tinx had been standing just moments ago. Her instincts had saved her life. But the attacker had disappeared without a trace, vanishing as swiftly as they had appeared. Finding them now would be nearly impossible. Damn it, Tinx muttered, pulling out her radio. Patch me through to HQ. I need all surrounding security cameras scanned immediately. A sniper just took a shot at me and managed to escape. Anchor connected instantly. HQ, this is Detective Tenker. There's been an attack in Sector 7, Western District. Detective Tinx was the target. Scan all nearby security feeds and track any suspicious movements. The sniper has fled, and we need to trace them. A response came within seconds. Understood, Detective. We're scanning the security grid now, but be advised there are blind spots in certain areas. If this was a professional assassin, they likely avoided detection. Tinx narrowed her eyes in frustration. Then our best chance is finding the traces they left behind. They turned back to the body. Tenker began a more detailed scan of the burn marks on the victim's clothing. The energy weapon used on the victim doesn't match standard Nova police technology, Tenker observed. But it resembles something I'd seen before, possibly a modified plasma blade. Tinx frowned. Who in Neovirex has access to that kind of weaponry? Tenker processed data rapidly. Officially, it's military-grade technology. However, there have been multiple reports of weapons smuggling over the past 6 months. Stolen plasma weapons may have been sold on the black market to unregistered cyborgs. Tinx carefully lifted the victim's hand and noticed something wedged beneath his fingernails, a small piece of synthetic skin. She plucked it free and pulled a compact scanning device from her pocket. This isn't human skin, she muttered, narrowing her eyes. It's synthetic. Tenker's eyes flickered. That means the killer, or at least someone who made contact with the victim, was a cyborg. Tinx exhaled sharply and activated her radio again. HQ, we've found synthetic tissue on the body. It could belong to an unregistered cyborg. Send a forensic team to collect and analyze it. A swift response followed. Copy that, Detective. A team is en route. Just then, Tenker lifted his head. Tinx, I found something interesting. He was scanning a splatter of blood on the wall, analyzing its direction and pattern. His red eyes glowed as he processed the data. Based on the blood trajectory, the victim struggled before he was killed. Tinx slowly stood, scanning the crime scene with new perspective. Someone wanted him dead, but I think he fought back. Maybe he knew something, maybe, Tenker nodded. Maybe that's the real reason he was killed. Arlen Voss had something, and someone was willing to kill to get it. At that moment, the radio crackled again. Detective Tinx, we have a lead. Tinx and Tenker exchanged a glance as the voice continued. While you were at the crime scene, a drone recorded footage of the sniper's escape. And there's something interesting, you weren't dealing with just one person. The sniper wasn't alone. Who? Tinx asked sharply. We don't know. The second figure wasn't picked up by facial recognition. But we suspect they might be an unregistered cyborg. Tinx and Tenker were no longer just hunting an assassin. They had stumbled onto the traces of an underground network of rogue cyborgs. After handing over the crime scene evidence to the forensic team, Tinx and Tenker quickly made their way to the Neovirex police headquarters, one of the most secure locations in the city. The towering complex of metal and glass was equipped with the latest cybersecurity systems, facial recognition algorithms, and AI-powered forensic labs. As Tinx parked her speeder bike, Tenker's glowing red eyes continued scanning their surroundings. I'm running a full system check for any potential cyber attacks on the headquarters, he said. If we're dealing with a powerful organization, they might attempt interference once they realize we're tracking them. Tinx nodded and strode toward the entrance. If they try to stop us, that just proves how dangerous they are, but we're not backing down now. After passing the security scans, they headed straight for the Advanced Analysis Unit, where real-time data from city-wide drones, surveillance cameras, and AI-enhanced investigation systems was collected. Officer Kell looked up as they entered. I think we've found something interesting for you, he said. We filtered the drone footage that captured the sniper's escape. Come take a look. Tinx and Tenker approached the large holographic display as Kell played the footage. What the video revealed, the sniper, cloaked in black tactical gear, moved swiftly across the rooftop. Another figure was with them, believed to be an unregistered cyborg. Both figures disappeared into the narrow alleys, avoiding security cameras entirely. Here, Kel said, pausing the video, "This is the clearest shot we have of the assassin." Tinx narrowed her eyes. "Can we see their face?" Kel enhanced the image, but the sniper wore a tactical mask, completely concealing their identity. "Unidentifiable," Kel said, "but that's not the most interesting part. Look at their companion." They zoomed in on the second figure. The cyborg wasn't a standard model. Though its body looked like an older design, it had non-regulation modifications, including a metal plate on its left chest, engraved with a mysterious emblem. Tinx's eyes sharpened. "Is this some kind of organization symbol?" Tenker's sensors hummed as he analyzed the emblem. "This marking, it's familiar. There are no official records of it, but I've seen similar insignias on old military prototypes. If I'm correct, this could be connected to the Black Code project." Tinx frowned. "Black Code, what's that?" Tenker accessed his internal database. Black Code was a secret government project in NeoVirex shut down years ago. It was a classified program designed to develop combat cyborgs for warfare. But the project lost control, and the government terminated it. According to official records, all prototypes were destroyed. Tinx exhaled. But clearly, not all of them were. Kel scrolled through the footage and pointed at another key detail. "And here's the most crucial part," he said. The cyborg in the footage was recorded connecting to a data panel, sending a message right before disappearing. A digital code appeared on the screen. Tinx squinted. "Could this be coordinates?" Tenker processed the data instantly. "Yes, it leads to a location outside the city perimeter, an area with abandoned industrial sites. If our suspects are headed there, it might be their base of operations." Tinx clenched her fist. "Then that's our next destination. The sniper may have escaped, but someone is pulling the strings behind all this, and this is our best lead to finding them." Tenker nodded. "We should prepare. If these really are remnants of the Black Code cyborgs, we're not just dealing with a rogue syndicate. This could be a mix of illegal cybernetic experiments and buried government secrets." Tinx smirked, checking her void blaster. "Now you're getting me excited, Tenker. Let's go hunting." As Tinx and Tenker moved further from the NeoVirex city center, the bright lights of the metropolis faded behind them. The streets grew darker, quieter, almost completely deserted. This district had been abandoned years ago due to illegal activities and high crime rates. But now, it was clear that someone had reclaimed it for their own purposes. Tinx parked her speeder bike a few blocks away from the factory and disappeared into the shadows alongside Tenker. "This used to be one of the old cyborg production facilities," Tenker whispered, scanning the building's history. "It was shut down a decade ago. On paper, this place should be empty." Tinx eyed the dark metal walls of the factory. "I've learned that what's on paper and what's real are two very different things," she muttered. The duo moved silently toward the factory's rear entrance. The main doors were locked, but a rusty ventilation panel stood loose on the side wall. Tinx pulled out a compact laser cutter, carefully slicing the bolts off. The metal cover slid free with a faint creak. "Go in first," Tenker said. "I'll keep scanning the perimeter." Tinx crawled into the narrow tunnel, the stale, metallic air pressing against her lungs. Distantly, she could hear the faint hum of active machinery. Hay emerged onto a catwalk overlooking the main production floor. The lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows over the abandoned facility. Though it had the appearance of a deserted site, it was very much active. From their vantage point, they observed the scene below. Several workers were moving around an old assembly line. Half-finished cyborg bodies lay across the workstations. Faint but recognizable symbols were scrawled on the walls, the Black Code emblem. Tinx held her breath. This is definitely a secret Black Code facility. Tenker's red eyes glowed as he analyzed the people below. 3 humans, 2 modified cyborgs. But more importantly, he focused on one particular area. Someone is restrained. Tinx's eyes followed his gaze. A man was tied to a chair, his clothes torn, his face bruised. Who was that? Tenker's systems quickly cross-referenced the face against the police database. Dr. Valencourt, a former government engineer. He worked on the Black Code project but disappeared years ago. He was believed to have gone into hiding. Tinx clenched her fists. Looks like they found him. And they're keeping him here. Tinx turned to Tenker and whispered, "We're going in quietly. We need to get Dr. Court out of here. If this place is really connected to the Black Code project, he could be the key to everything." Tenker nodded. "There are surveillance cameras. I can hack them, but I can only disable them for a few seconds." Tinx pulled out her silenced pistol and took a deep breath. "That's all we need. Let's move." Moving swiftly through the shadows, Tinx and Tenker advanced toward Dr. Court's chair. Tenker briefly shut down the security cameras, giving them a 10-second window. The duo leapt from their vantage point, landing silently on the factory floor, and maneuvered between metal shelves toward the restrained scientist. Dr. Court was injured but conscious. Tinx crouched beside him, speaking in a low voice. "Dr. Court, can you hear me? We need to get you out of here." Court's bloodshot eyes flickered open as he weakly whispered, "It's too late. They were already waiting for you." Tinx's heart skipped a beat. "What?" Suddenly, red alarms blared throughout the facility. From the ceiling, automated turrets descended, locking onto their position. Tenker grabbed Tinx and pulled her aside just as the first wave of bullets rained down on them. Meanwhile, the guards inside had already drawn their weapons. "They set us up," Tinx shouted, taking cover behind a metal barrier. This was a trap all along. As gunfire erupted, Tenker moved with inhuman speed, neutralizing several enemies within seconds, but there were too many. Tinx worked desperately to cut Court's restraints when a bullet tore through her arm. She gritted her teeth, blood seeping through her jacket. "Tinx, are you okay?" Tenker called out. Tinx clutched her wound and forced herself upright. "I'm fine, but if we don't get Court out of here..." Boom! An explosion rocked the factory. The chair Court was strapped to exploded in a fiery blast. Through the thick smoke, Tinx saw Court's lifeless body collapse onto the ground. "No!" she screamed. Court was dead. Someone had ensured they wouldn't take him alive. Tenker analyzed the situation instantly. "Tinx, we have to go now. Reinforcements could be coming, but we're outnumbered. If we stay, we won't make it out." Tinx clenched her fists, staring at Court's motionless body. He had all the answers. Double quotes. But there was no time to grieve. They were surrounded. Tenker activated an impulse from his arm. The factory's lights flickered and died, throwing the entire area into darkness. Using the momentary confusion, Tinx and Tenker vanished into the shadows, dodging gunfire as they raced toward the exit. Bullets zipped past them, barely missing. Breathing heavily, they burst out of the factory and into the night, disappearing into the abandoned streets. An hour later, in a safe zone, Tinx gritted her teeth while tending to her wound. "We lost Court, but at least now we know what we're up against." Tenker nodded. "This isn't just a group of rogue cyborgs. This is a coordinated operation." Court was silenced because he knew something. "And now, we'll never know what that was." Tinx narrowed her eyes. "Then we find another way. Court must have left clues behind. There could still be intel in that factory. And I know one thing for sure." She locked eyes with Tenker. "Someone bigger is behind this." Tenker gave a silent nod. They weren't just hunting a killer anymore. They were chasing the mastermind of a deep conspiracy. A thick fog clung to the abandoned factory, shrouding it in eerie silence. The flickering streetlights cast weak, unreliable glows, while the wind howled through the empty buildings. Tinx and Tenker stood a few blocks away, scanning their surroundings. "This time, we're prepared," Tinx whispered, still pressing against the wound on her arm. Thanks to Tenker's advanced medical systems, the bleeding had stopped, but she needed to keep her mind sharp to ignore the pain. "We've seen their security systems before," Tenker noted, "but now they might be expecting us. If we go back in, it could be a death trap." Tinx smirked slightly. "Then we move in the shadows. Let's go." This time, they avoided the front entrance and ventilation shafts. Instead, Tinx led the way through an old maintenance tunnel connected to the factory's foundation. Meanwhile, Tenker linked into the security network, scanning for activity. The security systems hadn't fully recovered from the EMP attack. Most of the guards had abandoned the facility, but a few patrols remained. The spot where Dr. Court died was still untouched, likely left as is due to the urgency of their escape. Moving silently through the corroded metal corridors, Tinx and Tenker crept forward. The cold air carried the heavy scent of rust and decay, suffocating in the silence. Once inside, the factory was eerily quiet. The area where the gunfight had taken place was still dimly lit, with flickering lights overhead. Bloodstains remained on the ground. But something was off. Court's body was gone. Tinx narrowed her eyes. They removed him. But they were in a hurry. The blood is still fresh. Tenker crouched, running a metallic finger over a burn mark on the floor. Something was incinerated here. They may have tried to destroy evidence. Tinx turned her gaze toward the control room. Some of the monitors were still active. If Court was working on something before he died, it might still be stored here. As they stepped into the control room, a faint pulse of electrical energy hummed through the air. Someone's been here recently, Tenker noted, his red eyes glowing. The electronic lock on the door was accessed not long ago. Tinx raised her weapon, stepping cautiously inside. The dim glow of computer screens illuminated the space. Along the walls, holographic blueprints of black code cyborg models were still displayed. But the most important discovery was on a single terminal, still powered on ... File name Project Nightfall. Last modified 6 hours ago. Tinx's heart pounded. Court found something before he died. She quickly accessed the file. Streams of encrypted data and complex algorithms flashed across the screen. But at the bottom of the screen, a single audio recording remained. Tinx pressed play. A distorted, weakened voice echoed through the room. If you're hearing this, I'm already dead. But this is only the beginning. Black code never ended. They think they stopped it, but it has only grown in the shadows. When they found me, I knew they would silence me. If I don't make it out, you must stop Nightfall. Because if they activate it, Neovirex will fall. The recording cut out. Suddenly, the room's lights went out. Tinx, something's wrong, Tenker muttered. A cold, mechanical voice echoed from the terminal. Unauthorized access detected. Security protocol activated. Targets identified. Engaging termination sequence. Doors slammed shut, locking them inside. Damn it, Tinx cursed. Another trap. From the walls, automated turrets emerged, their targeting systems locking onto them. Weapons primed. We need a way out. What the hell is Nightfall? Tinx yelled. Only one way to find out, Tenker replied, rapidly calculating an escape route. But we have to survive first. The room was bathed in flashing red emergency lights. Automated turrets emerged from the walls, locking onto Tinx and Tenker as the facility's defense system initiated its termination protocol. Unauthorized access detected. Targets engaged for elimination. Tinx, we have to move now. Tenker shouted, rapidly calculating possible escape routes. But Tinx didn't move. No, she snarled. I can't leave until I get Court's data on Nightfall. Tenker hesitated for a fraction of a second. His logic protocols screamed at him to get them out, but Tinx's determination was something even his programming couldn't ignore. Finally, he made his choice. Fine, I'll cover you, but hurry. Tinx quickly accessed the terminal, initiating the download of Court's encrypted files into a portable drive. But the data was heavily protected, and decryption was slow. File transfer, 10%. Damn it, it's too slow, she muttered. The turrets opened fire. Tenker reacted instantly. His superhuman reflexes kicked in as he dodged behind a metal shelf, then activated an EMP pulse grenade. The turrets short-circuited, momentarily disabling them for a few seconds. I bought you 20 seconds, Tinx. That's all I can do. File transfer, 45%. Come on, she growled, fingers flying across the keyboard. As the system continued decrypting, a disturbing message flashed across the screen. Nightfall protocol activated. Tinx's heart skipped a beat. What the hell does that mean? File transfer 75%. Tinx, we're out of time. Tenker yelled as the turrets rebooted, their targeting systems coming back online. The defense system was re-engaging. File transfer 90%, just one more push. Tinx gritted her teeth and forced a manual override to speed up the final process. File transfer 100% data secured. Got it, but at that exact moment, a powerful shockwave erupted from the terminal, hurling Tinx backward. Tenker sprinted to her side, quickly scanning her for injuries. I'm fine, she coughed, forcing herself up. But we need to get out now. The entire system was crashing. Control panels flickered and exploded in sparks. But then, something far worse happened. Nightfall protocol engaged. The screen flickered with one final warning. Countdown initiated. 3, 2, 1. A deep, metallic groan echoed through the factory. From the depths of the facility, a hidden door slowly slid open. Tinx and Tenker froze, and then, something moved. A shadow, silent, but deadly. A cold, mechanical hum echoed from the depths of the factory, intensifying the tension in the air. The terminal screen flickered, displaying Nightfall protocol engaged, while Tenker scanned for active threats. Tinx, this is a bad idea. We need to get out of here right now. Tinx narrowed her eyes, staring at the shadow emerging from the darkened passageway. Her heartbeat quickened, but she knew running now would only leave them in the dark about what they were up against. No, she whispered. We need to see what we're dealing with. Boom! Something heavy crashed through the steel door. A faint hiss of steam filled the room as the sound of metallic footsteps reverberated through the control center. And then it stepped forward, Nightfall, the forgotten weapon. A 10-foot-tall, black metallic entity emerged from the shadows. Humanoid in form, but entirely synthetic. Carved black coat insignias lined its armored body, relics of a forgotten past. Glowing red sensor eyes scanned the room like a predator locking onto its prey. A known energy source detected, 5 times faster than standard cyborg models. No combat data in the Nova Police database. Learning AI detected adapts to combat scenarios in real time. Tinx, this thing is a walking execution machine. Tinx watched as Nightfall took slow, deliberate steps toward them. Its liquid-like metallic surface pulsed with an unnatural glow. A deep, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. Unauthorized access detected, targets identified. Commencing elimination protocol. Then, in an instant, it moved. Nightfall lunged so fast that it was almost a blur. Tenker barely had time to react. With inhuman strength, Nightfall struck Tenker, sending him flying across the room. His metallic body smashed through a storage rack, crashing onto the factory floor. Tenker, Tinx shouted. She immediately raised her weapon and fired. Bullets struck Nightfall's body but did nothing. The metallic surface rippled, absorbing the impact. Self-repair mechanisms kicked in, sealing the damage instantly. Impossible, Tinx muttered. It's regenerating. Nightfall attacked again. Tinx dodged at the last second, rolling aside as Nightfall's fist smashed into the concrete floor, shattering it completely. This thing is unstoppable, she yelled. We need to run. Tenker's system struggled to reboot after the impact. His internal diagnostics flashed with critical warnings. This thing wasn't just a cyborg, it was something far worse. Evolving combat AI can predict and counter opponent movements. Armor is resistant to standard weapons. Nightfall spoke again. Targets will be eliminated. Escape is not an option. Boom! The factory lights flickered violently as Nightfall's energy levels spiked. Tinx, move! Tenker yelled, forcing himself up. But we have the data, we know what Nightfall is. She argued. None of that matters if we're dead. Tinx cursed under her breath, but she knew Tenker was right. They weren't ready for this fight. With one final blast, Tenker smashed through an old ventilation shaft. This is our only way out. Tinx looked back. Nightfall's shifting form was becoming more dangerous by the second. We'll finish this another day. And she jumped into the tunnel. Tenker followed, throwing an amp grenade behind them. The vent collapsed, sealing Nightfall inside. For now, as the duo escaped into the underground tunnels, the city swallowed them in darkness. But they knew the truth now, and the hunt for answers had only just begun. The factory trembled as alarms blared, and the sound of shattering metal echoed through the collapsing structure. Every thunderous step of nightfall reverberated in Tinx and Tenker's ears. They had to escape through the ventilation shaft, but nightfall was too fast. The ceiling collapsed. Tinx stumbled, struggling to reach the vent opening, but then nightfall's shadow loomed over her. Targets cannot escape. Termination required. Nightfall lunged, its razor-sharp claws extending in a single, deadly strike. But then, Tenker stepped in. With his full strength, Tenker shoved Tinx forward, sending her flying toward the vent entrance as he collided with Nightfall. The impact shook the entire underground tunnel. Tinx crashed against the metal entrance, hitting the ground hard, but she scrambled to get up immediately. "Tenker, no, what are you doing?" But Tenker had already made his decision. "Tinx," his voice, for the first time, sounded like more than just metal. "I have to do this. You have to live." Tinx grabbed the edge of the vent, trying to climb back, but Tenker turned to give her one final look. A goodbye. Tenker's core reactor began overloading. His eyes glowed brighter. "Go, Tinx." Tinx's eyes burned with emotion as she lunged forward, reaching out, but it was too late. Tenker locked onto Nightfall, gripping the monstrous machine with every ounce of his strength, dragging it down with him. A massive EMP detonation engulfed the factory, swallowing everything in a blinding white light. Tinx, falling through the ventilation shaft, caught a final glimpse of Tenker and Nightfall disappearing into the explosion. And then, silence. Tinx landed in a cold, damp underground tunnel. The factory collapsed above her, sending shockwaves through the ground. Tenker was gone. She clenched her fists, her breath uneven. The ache in her chest was unbearable. "No," she whispered, "you didn't leave me. You were my friend." But she couldn't go back. She knew Tenker had given her one last chance and she wouldn't waste it. Nightfall still had to be stopped. Slowly, she rose to her feet. Blood trickled from her arm, but she kept her gaze fixed on the ruins above. "I'll finish this for you, Tenker." For a long moment, she stared at the remains of the factory, her eyes glistening with emotion. But she wouldn't cry. Not now. She turned away and walked into the darkness.